and the sight and sounds of college football is certainly upon us. College students are moving back into their dormitories across the nation and getting ready for that next year of college classes. Joining us today from Clemson University is Paula Beecher, and from Iowa State is Mike Gaul. On this episode of FieldLink, we'll be discussing everything from college enrollment at the College of Agriculture, the impact of COVID, career fairs, internships, and what the recent market is asking for in terms of demands for today's college agriculture students. In addition, Jody Lawrence will join us from Nashville to touch up on the commodity markets. And finally, we'll visit with Chris Williams from the Helena Products Group. Chris will share some insight around sports turf and sports turf management. Stay tuned for FieldLink. Joining us here today on FieldLink are two representatives from universities across the country that really are at the top of their game. Joining us today from Clemson University is Paula Beecher and Mike Gaul from Iowa State University. Guys, welcome to FieldLink.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Yeah, really excited to have both of you on the show today. I know we've worked together for many, many years, and certainly, folks, two of the top recognized individuals in their role with career services and helping young people in their respective colleges find their journey as they look for homes and careers down the road. You know, a lot's happened over the last several years here. I know all of us are exiting kind of that COVID phase right now, but Paula, why don't you share a little bit of some of the things happening at Clemson University and share a little bit about your background?
Sure. I've been at Clemson for 16 years, and my role at Clemson has changed a little bit over the course of the last few years, but I'm Director of Alumni and Career Services. I always say I have the best job in student services, the most fun job. I get to see students be successful and help give them the tools to go to that next step, which led into me taking on the alumni role because a lot of our alums are students that I've worked with in the past or employers that I work with currently to place our students. So it was a natural fit and really fun for me. We have definitely seen trends over the last, and before Clemson, I was at LSU, so I've been in the industry for 25 years, and we've definitely seen trends change, and I think the COVID pandemic put a whole new spin on our lives and the way we do business and the way we communicate with students. And I'll be interested to hear what Mike says. I don't think we have it figured out yet. We're just rolling with the punches and trying new things, throwing darts at a dartboard and seeing what's working. But definitely a new crop of students that learn differently, that want to interact differently. So we're constantly trying to change with that.
Well, thank you, Paula. And joining us from Ames, Iowa at Iowa State University is Mike Gaul. Mike, welcome to FieldLink.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me. So like Paula, I'm Mike Gaul here. I'm solely career services. I've been in this role for 24 years. This will be my 25th career fair here in about a month and a half. So boy, time flies when you're having fun. But, you know, to Paula's point, we do have the best jobs on campus. Watching these students succeed, it's second to none in terms of rewarding out there. So, yeah, a lot of trends, a lot of new mindsets out there, and it's still an amazing time. But yeah, it's definitely a different normal.
Definitely a different normal. Well, Paula, how does enrollment look for the College of Agriculture at Clemson University?
So our enrollments look really good right now. We always say enrollment has a little bit to do with academics and a lot to do with the culture and popularity of university. So we had a little friend called Dabo that came to Clemson about 10 years ago, and our enrollments have just extremely exploded since that time. So university-wide, we had over 57,000 applications last year for our freshman class. So we have a lot of students. In our college, our enrollments continue to increase. Not as much. The last 5 years, we've definitely had a small increase in enrollment, but not like we were seeing in 2013, 2014. We're also seeing a trend that we're really investigating right now and exploring further is most of our students are graduating in three and a half years versus the traditional 4-year. They're coming in with so many high school credits. So that affects your total enrollment. So although we're getting good freshman class, our total enrollment's not growing that exponentially, and we are seeing data results that's one of the indicators of that.
Awesome. And Mike, tell us a little bit about some of the trends that you're picking up at Iowa State.
Well, enrollment-wise, much like Paula, yeah, we got a little bit of a football resurgence thanks to Mr. Matt Campbell out there, but enrollment this year looks to be pretty good. I think our freshman numbers, from what I heard from our marketing team, is the freshman numbers are up, which is great. Transfers, a little bit flat, which is not surprising coming out of COVID from a lot of the community colleges. And our international numbers are up, which you would expect them to be, obviously, probably everywhere because they haven't been coming the last couple of years. So enrollment-wise, it's looking good. And, I'm partial to this group. I'm sure Paul is too, but you always want to see that freshman number up because, it's such an exciting time of their life to come here and to have that 4-year experience. It's so much fun to watch them grow. So I was glad to see that those numbers were up this year. And we'll talk a little bit more, I think, when we get to the major part there. But we definitely have some increases in several of our college numbers there, too, from big majors. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, why don't we go there, Mike? You're right. Fall is a great time. You got that freshman class, a tremendous amount of energy. We talked about it earlier. Football season is here. Just the newness, the students, parents unloading their kids into dormitories, and just all of the overall energy on campus is an exciting time.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's always that energy the first week, and you got to love the first day, right? When you get to campus and at 7:30, there's kids that have been here a half hour trying to figure out what class I'm going to. But it's a great energy level, and you can just tell it's an exciting time of their life out there. But when we look at like specific majors within our college this year that have shown some good growth. I mean, I just talked to a good colleague of mine in animal science, and they're up to about 1,100 students right now in that major, which is our biggest major. And, I suspect like a lot of the big schools, those ANSI majors, there's probably a very high percentage that are coming in as pre-vet, which we'll talk more about, I'm sure, as we go through this. But the demand for vets right now is just off the charts good. So that was an area that's got a lot of growth. The Ag Biz program here as well had a significantly large freshman class come in, and that was good. Their numbers have been shrinking a bit, but you look at the job market for students in all aspects of Ag Biz, whether it's sales to merchandising to marketing, man, the demand is so good out there right now. It was really, really good to see those numbers bounce up too.
And those are awesome numbers, and it's very good insight. And Paula, what kind of trends are you seeing at the college level?
Much. Animal science, definitely. This year we had a huge increase. It is our largest major individually, not the largest department, but the largest major. And definitely a little caught off guard by the increase. It's always, of course, been a popular major, but definitely animal science. And then, some of our traditional majors. We even saw a little bit of surge in forestry this year, not exponentially large, but we are seeing a few more students come that way. Agribusiness always continues to be popular. I think that's just kind of our general ag major out there. And we are hoping, our goal is to convert those pre-vets to animal industry, animal agribusiness majors. So we're seeing that as a potential for us to create some more supply in the animal industry versus vet school.
Paula, we talked a little bit about this. Are you seeing some trends as we dig a little bit deeper into some of those numbers? Any different trends, like demographics? Are the students coming from different non-rural areas? What are your colleges all experiencing in that area?
Yeah, I think a big misclaimed notion out there is that agriculture is still male-dominated. For our college, it's definitely not. We're 57% female, 43% male. Clemson University actually just tipped over. Clemson is 51, 49 ish. So I think that's an old-timey myth out there that it's always male-dominated, and there are definitely still some majors that are male-dominated. Our animal science program, though, 83% female. It is definitely a female-dominated industry for us, and for diversity purposes, we're always looking to increase that, the male-wise, which we haven't had to do for many majors. Far as urban versus suburban versus rural, it's a hard number for us to capture. A lot of students have a different definition of what I come from a farm means. We've started changing that to, does the majority of your income come from farming? But we have a very small percent, probably less than 5% that are coming from the farm.
Mike, what kind of trends are you picking up at Iowa State in that area?
Yeah, that's interesting. I was chuckling when Paula was throwing her stats out there because ironically, we were exactly the same. It's 57% women in our college here, 43 male, and at the university level, it's the exact opposite. It's only 43% women and 57% men. But college-wide, it is 57-43, and that number's ticked up the last couple of years. In terms of demographics, yeah, obviously this is Iowa, and so we're drawing a lot of our students from, these rural areas there. But what's interesting is we've really done a pretty good job of tapping into talent from, our border states like Illinois. We're getting a lot of students from Illinois coming here because they can actually come here cheaper out of state that they can go to the state school there in state. So we're pulling a lot of kids out of Illinois and Minnesota and Wisconsin and some of these neighboring states there. But yeah, 57, 43, and I mean, these women, they are incredibly sharp. I look at, the Sigma Alpha bunch that we work with very closely, and boy, oh boy, they are just incredibly bright and talented women.
I hear that too a lot from our employers, how much better our female students are doing in interviews, in the follow-up, in the details. And I always chuckle when I talk to our male students and say, hey, you got to up your game. You're getting beat out here by our female population.
I agree with you 110% there. I've always contended, I feel our women students take their career search and their career prep, a lot more seriously than their male counterparts do.
Mike, tell us a little bit about, the agronomy area at Iowa State. And so, yeah, the agronomy major here is we've got a great agronomy program here at Iowa State. Obviously, I'm a little biased there, but, and the beauty of that major is that these students can go so many different ways with it. You look at agronomy sales, you look at seed production, you look at the research, the plant breeding side, you look at consulting, you look at precision ag pieces to it. You look at soil conservation. It's ironic I say that, but actually 2 years ago when we put our top 10 list together for our college of employers, usually it's all the heavy hitters like Corteva and Bayer and those guys. 2 years ago it was the NRCS. They hired like 17 full-time students out of our program there. So the agronomy major, you can take it a lot of different ways. I guess what saddens me is there's not more students in that major. I know they had a really aggressive marketing scheme several years ago. It paid off for them. The quality students in there are top notch, but they just need so many more because the supply and demand for people in that area is huge. Just look at the career day attendee list and how many have agronomic ties to it. It's just absolutely crazy. And these companies have gotten pretty aggressive too, especially on the sales and marketing side. All these kids that are interning with them coming back for their senior year, every one of them has got, unless they've, things haven't worked out, but almost every one of them has got a full-time offer from those companies out there. And so, yeah, the demand for students in that major right now is just really, really, really strong. And I think part of the problem with that too, it's not really a problem, but when you look at placement numbers there, that's always a major that's got a fairly high percentage of students that go on for further education. So not only do you have a small graduating class to begin with, now you've taken out maybe 25% that are going to go on for plant breeding and stuff like that won't be entering the employment market, the job market there. So yeah, we need more in agronomy, that's for sure. It's a great program. Paula, are you seeing some of the same thing in turf as well as forestry, as you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, 100%. I wish I could have double the number of students we have. Ours is called in plant environmental sciences, and in that encompasses horticulture, turfgrass, and the agronomy areas. Our program is definitely research-based. Most of our students will be encouraged by faculty members to go on for a PhD or master's. So I need tons more, and definitely the opportunities are endless in that field. In fact, we're encouraging a lot of our agribusiness students to take additional classes in the plant and crop areas so that they can have that basic technical knowledge, and a lot of those big crop companies are hiring them with just a surface knowledge, not as scientists, of course, but could definitely do more. Forestry for a long time was a worrisome area for us. It was not a lot of students got excited about trees. In our state, it's the number one industry. And so the job market in the Southeast in general, as you all know, forestry is huge. So we've actually seen a little bit of an increase in those majors over the last few years, which is exciting. I could place double the number of students. If you go down my career fair list, forestry is probably one of the top company list there, and not just for forestry majors, but for agribusiness, our ag mechanization and business area. You have the manufacturing side, the procurement side, the consulting side, the U.S. and state forest services, of course. So I think forestry is exciting, and I think it's an industry that's hopefully never going away. And so that and agronomy, I think, are foundational programs and ones we always should be concentrating on.
So can I just add a couple things to that real quick here, Bill? One, Paula's spot on. I think a really deadly combination with our ag biz majors these days is an ag biz major, and it's amazing how many kids pick up minors out there, but an ag biz agronomy minor, ag biz major agronomy minor is a wonderful approach for students. But our turf program here is actually housed in horticulture, okay? And boy, we just need so many more students in turf as well. So I started my career here at Iowa State actually in the horticulture department, and I was there in the 90s, and the turf program there in the 90s was just going through the roof, and it was driven mainly because Tiger Woods came on board, right? And so every guy that loved to play golf, boy, I want to be a golf course superintendent. And so we had, in the late 90s, we had upwards of 160 turf majors in that program. And about a year or so ago, I was talking to the professor over there in Hort, and now they've only got about 30 turf majors in there. But here's what's perplexing with it. It was not perplexing, but it's great. But half of those turf majors really are more interested in sports turf now versus the golf course side of things. So I just worry on the golf course side of things with the pandemic in terms of how golf had a resurgence and the limited number of students that are going to golf course superintendent business. There's got to be a lot of golf course superintendents out there that are thinking it's retirement time soon. And to get some qualified students in there, I think there's going to be some fantastic opportunities out there. And I'm on the listserv for it, and it's just amazing, these golf courses that have got, we're talking primetime golf courses, Pinehurst and Augusta National, places like that are looking for interns that can't find them,
Yeah, Augusta's in our backyard and have to beg students because they have so many offers. And I'll piggyback on that. So and don't quote me on this statistic, but I think we're one of the last handful of standalone turf programs. Our degree is still in turf grass, but it still struggles. And I've honestly encouraged a lot of our employers to go to our 2-year tech school as a complement. A lot of those students are getting enough foundation, maybe not to be the golf course superintendent, but to definitely be managers of crews and things. And we just don't have enough numbers to fill even a third of the positions out there.
Yeah, it's definitely an evolving area, that turf area. This is our first year that we've actually expanded our internship program in that area. And I think we had somewhere around 20 or so interns across the U.S. focusing in forestry as well as the turf space. And we intend to continue to grow that area. Let's talk a little bit. It's been catching the headlines, especially here in the last few weeks. The cost of college, tuition, expenses in the area. What are some things that you as faculty members are kind of picking up from your students?
Well, we're pretty fortunate here. Obviously, every class I go to and I give them the old, let's talk about the job market thing, blah, blah, blah. I remind them that coming to college is the biggest investment they're going to make in their life, one of their biggest, and they are given every opportunity to be successful here, whether it's through great internships with companies like Helena or the club opportunities or the study abroads or just their academic curriculum. And, those that struggle are the ones that don't embrace those things there. But from an investment perspective, we're a land-grant school. We are actually one of the least expensive schools around from that perspective in terms of tuition here. And, especially as I mentioned before, we got a lot of students that are coming from Illinois because they can come here out of state cheaper than they can go in-state there. But these students, honestly, yeah, it's on their radar screen. But I think what I admire about our students, and I'm sure Paula sees the same thing there, is that there's two things that really help them out. I'm amazed at how many kids actually graduate with zero debt, okay? And a lot of that's driven by, these kids aren't afraid to work. I mean, in classes I go to, how many have a part-time job? And it's like every hand in the room goes up. So they're not afraid to work, and they earn a decent wage around here. And so many colleges anymore have such a robust scholarship program that these students that get after it and are proactive with their applications, they do very, very well from that standpoint too. So there's a lot of opportunities out there to buffer that cost of that. But again, it goes back to, this is an investment. You want an ROI on that. You got to put yourself out there and take advantage of everything that's presented to you. And every school typically will do that to the students.
Yeah. We have a little bit more of a challenge. Our tuition is fairly high. Our students could probably go to Iowa State too cheaper from South Carolina.
We'll take them.
Please don't. Our tuition is not, luckily with COVID, it was the Board of Trustees has kept it pretty constant the last 3 years. So that's helped tremendously. But we have a big out-of-state population, about 40% out-of-state, and those students are spending a lot of money to come to Clemson. So I do see a lot of our students are graduating with more debt than maybe 10 years ago, and that worries me a little bit. But I think more than tuition, it's the cost of everything else. There's fees, but then the housing costs in Clemson have just skyrocketed. I mean, a student will rent one room in an apartment. It'll cost them $1,000 a month. When I was going to school, our rent was like $300 for the whole apartment, and we all split it, that kind of thing. So I think it's the other cost, even if they're not trying to live extravagantly. It's just these new apartment complexes, and those kind of things are rising the total cost of a university. But as Mike said, it is a return on investment, and I think college is definitely worth the investment.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. I can sit back, and I know I've got one daughter that's just graduated, one's currently in college, and those students, as Mike indicated, that dig in, do a little part-time work, focus on internships, and really focus hard on those scholarships and the academics, they can get through fairly reasonably. It's the other stuff. It's to your point, the housing and things that you can't always control that can get a little bit crazy from time to time. Which brings me, I guess, to the next point. College, four-year college, that is, it's really not for everybody. Are you seeing some trends where some students that are considering a four-year school but maybe hit that two-year college, the technical schools, for maybe even before choosing to come to the four-year school?
I do think we are seeing our transfer numbers are increasing a little bit more than they were 10 years ago. A lot of dual enrollment from high school, as I mentioned earlier, the students graduating quicker. A lot of times that is because they went to their two-year institution for a couple of years. Financially, it makes tons of sense. Get some of those gen ed requirements out of the way at a two-year school where it's a little more economical. Transfer into the four-year, finish your degree strong. But we're also seeing we're partnering more with our technical colleges on some of the degrees that may not need the 4 years. I don't think every student has to go to college to be successful at all. I think there's lots of opportunities for a student to have a great career from a two-year institution. So I'm one that works at a four-year institution, but I see great value in the two-year technical system, and I think it's always going to be a place in higher ed for that.
Yeah, I would echo those same thoughts there. I mean, there's so, in the trades especially, there's so much money to be made. There's so much demand for people in those industries. And I get it, and we all respect it. I mean, college is definitely not for everybody out there, and that's fine, okay? At the end of the day, find your passion and go with it. But I mean, Paula brought up a really good point there, which I wasn't even thinking about there. But what is so perplexing these days, back when I was in school a million years ago, was how many of these students come in with these dual credits from high school. I mean, it's not uncommon to have a student come in with 40 or 50 out of high school, okay? There's pros and cons to it in terms of maturity level and such with that. But, I didn't have that growing up. And, just to come in with 12 credits or 16 credits, it's a great buffer semester for you, and so there are a lot of students, to Paula's point there, that are getting out in 3.5 years because of these credits. And I just had that question asked in the class yesterday, is December a good time to be getting out? And December's a wonderful time to be getting out, because the reality is, look at it, you've got, you're in the peak season of recruitment, right? Everybody wants you. Your competitive numbers are 2-to-1 versus May grads. Okay. And then if you do the dollar crunching, all right, what am I going to spend on another semester of going to school versus where salaries are today that I can potentially make in 5 months? $35,000, $45,000 swing right there. And Lord knows our ag students, they're in tune with money, and that dollar amount really resonates with them. So we're we kind of got off track with this, but they're coming and going at all different times here with that.
No, I agree with that December grad. I think it's a great time to graduate. And from a business perspective, that's when companies typically are needing talent, especially in the agriculture agronomy side of the business, where, spring season's just around the corner. We've got new budgets. Boy, that's go time. And a great opportunity for students to consider December grad. Mm-hmm. Mike, you were involved in a recent study that took a look at different compensation levels. Can you tell us a little bit about that study?
Yeah, we've been doing it for about 15 years. It's great because we work collaboratively with schools, like with Paula and all other buddies out there in the career service realm. And so we get about 20 schools, because let me preface this, because Paula and I both know that tracking students is difficult. Tracking salaries is like pulling teeth, right? And so collectively, we're able to get, a pretty good picture of what's going on out there. This year, I think I had 2,400 salary points given to me, and that's solely salaries versus further education. So we had a really good pool of data on that. We look at like 9 different sectors: ag business, ag education, agronomy, animal science, environmental science, engineering, stuff like that. And I think all of us realize, these things have got to go up this year, given everything that's going on. But I'm about to shoot it out tomorrow to these colleagues of mine, and out of those 9 sectors, the average salary increase for an entry level was 8.4%. 8.4%. We saw horticulture numbers almost like 19% increase. Hort historically has been a little on the low side of things, but you look at, we talked about turf already, the demand there, but think about, what did people do during the pandemic? They improved their homes. And so they needed what? They needed landscape designers. They needed landscape installation people. They needed nursery management. They needed greenhouse. Supply and demand, hort majors aren't going through the roof, right? And so that really favored them. But it was really, really interesting to crunch these numbers. Probably the most interesting report I've ever sat down and put together, because last year, I don't know if you remember, Paula's salaries were as flat as a pancake last year. And this year, like agribusiness, we had 402 or 409 salaries reported. The average salary was like 55.6 or something out of there. So this just goes back to the theme that we talked about all along here. What a great time to be a student out there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this survey is so valuable for us. As Mike said, getting salaries is like pulling teeth. And so for us to be able to tell our students in recruiting new students, these are the averages. This is a national average. It's been very valuable for us to have that data.
And Bill, even it's amazing how many industry people use it too. I mean, we get calls all the time. What's the going rate for a grain merchandiser, or whatever. And so by referring them this report, we get a lot of positive feedback on it from that standpoint too. But yeah. What an interesting year.
Well, and what a wonderful tool for, young freshmen that are, just entering into college, or seniors in high school that are looking for that next journey. They can have a nice roadmap, or at least a point to, direct them towards their future from that financial perspective.
And Bill, that's such a good point that you bring up, because we touched upon your investment in college, right? And that return on investment. And I'm not going to throw, certain majors outside of agriculture under the bus here, but there are times when I'm sure Paul and I both scratch our head going, why are you majoring in this, right? Okay. And so you've got to be realistic about that return on that investment. And so, to see numbers like that are hardcore numbers there that only reinforce that, serves all parties pretty well.
Mike, Paula, I want to thank you again for your time, and for those parents and for those students that want to see this type of report, I encourage them to, where should they reach out, Mike, and pick that report up?
It'll be posted on our website. They can email me at Mike Gaul and Paula as well. We'll all have it. Just email us respectively. And like I said, I'm going to route out tomorrow, get any feedback, and then probably officially turn it loose next week sometime. So.
Let's talk a little bit about how things have transitioned. Mike, you clearly have one of the top career fairs, and Paula, I know you have a really solid one as well.
We all know Mike's is the best.
Tell us a little bit about your career fair, Mike, but what I really want to go to, though, is how has that, transition? What kind of trends are you seeing in the career fair side of things?
Yeah, that is a great question, because it has been such an interesting 3 years. So I'm going to go back 3 years. 2019, we had our largest fair ever. Okay, 2019, as I'm sure most schools did. I mean, they were all busting at the seams. We were lucky we had 278 at that event. And then 2020, you couldn't find an in-person fair anywhere in this country. And I think we were lucky to have 180 at our virtual events. Okay. And then last year we were back. We did both an in-person and a virtual one there. And the in-person was pretty well attended. We had about 210 companies at this thing. And now we're back to solely in-person event. Okay. There's only one. Our engineering is just blowing up, right? It's a great job market. So our engineering college has 3 career fairs this fall, 2 in person. They're the only one doing a virtual one, and it's only got like 35 companies at it. But where I'm going with this whole thing is, and even last year, this was the best part about last year's fall career fair. There was a unique energy level to it. And the reason why there was, the student numbers were down a little, but those that were there are the kids you wanted to be there, and the recruiters wanted to be there. And so it was a great vibe. It was a great energy level. And I think it was driven by the fact of, which we all know agriculture is all about this, about building relationships and be able to walk up to somebody at a career fair, maybe not shake their hand, but give them a little fist bump and start that conversation and start to build that relationship. That's what makes these career fairs so special. And so this year, as Paul and I were talking about, career fairs this year, Bill, are going through the roof. I can't even tell you this, but last year we had 210. As of when we started this episode here, we were at 212, and we're almost 6 weeks out yet. So there's an incredibly good chance this is going to be our largest fair ever, but it's just mind-boggling, and it's everywhere. Not only in engineering, or not only in ag, but in engineering and business, and not only at Iowa State, but at every school across the country. I'm telling students right now with the career fair, people, this is as good as it gets. Okay, so that's what I think concerns me the most about career fairs, and Paul will probably back me on this, but we got the companies there. Can we get the kids there? So I just really, really hope they realize how good this is, versus May of 2009, which would have been the worst time to graduate from college. Now we're in spring of 2023. This is the best time. This is as good as it gets. Paula, what do you think?
100% agree. Even last spring, the number of job postings that were coming through the office and on the system were amazing to me. How good the market was. And I got requests for career fairs started in April. When is your career fair opening? When is your registration opening? So I kind of thought it might start getting busy, and we have to max out because of our facility we have. But across campus, the numbers are booming, and our students are actually excited. Our numbers for virtual fair for both employers and students were terrible. Our students just did not convert well to that. And I think Mike hit the nail on the head. It's all about relationships. It's seeing that recruiter in person when I'm nervous and they're putting me to ease and I can have a conversation. On Zoom, that's just awkward for everyone. So I talked to some employers this summer and they were still on the fence about traveling. There are still some companies out there. I don't know what Helena's policy is about, but travel's still on the fence. And I said, look, if you're not on campus, you're going to miss the boat. I have 2 Zooms tomorrow with companies who aren't probably not going to get to come to the career fair, and they're like, when can we post? When can we get in front of students? And they're just not going to have the reaction I'm afraid that they would if they were in person. I mean, it doesn't, for me, I'm happy to post and happy to help boost their postings out there. But there's something to be said for that in person. I do worry, Mike, will the students show up for the numbers that we have? We'll see.
Yeah. And I think you're right. That virtual piece, it just, it was, for us as directors, it's easy peasy, right? You just let Carico or whoever run with it, and we can kind of sit there and monitor who's on whatever chat or whatever. But I remember initially, because the students had to sign up for it in advance, and we hit like 1,400, and I'm like, oh man, this is great. They're killing it. And then one of my colleagues out there reminded me, said, yeah, that's great, but it's how many show up that count. And I never thought of that. And I'll be damned, the day of the event, like 800 showed up, actually logged on and signed up for.
I think ours was half.
Yeah, it was, I couldn't believe it. And then to your point, Paul, about these companies that can only do it virtually, they're going to miss out. I mean, we had a virtual fair last year, and John Deere was only coming to virtual fairs here on campus. Okay. Bill, you've been to ours. John Deere usually pulls out a lead rec center with pickup loads of resumes. Okay, and an in-person event. And last year we had a 5-hour chat with available. They had 10 students log on for chats with John Deere. 10. Yeah. So these companies that are only going to go that route, I hate to say it, they're going to pay the price.
Well, I think you're spot on, and listen, I'm speaking from a little bit of experience here from watching my two girls go through this over the last 3 years. One graduating at Knoxville, one's at Montana State right now, and just kind of observing. I think they're just COVIDed it out. They're videoed out, and they're really looking to make those relationships and those fist bumps, like you mentioned, Mike.
Yeah, we got to get them out of that funnel and get them back to the new normal. Which is part of the old normal. So,
speaking about recruiting, are you seeing some trends? What are some things that, as we've got a lot of farmer growers that are listening to, this podcast, and a lot of them are looking for employees too, many graduates. What are you seeing maybe that sector of the business doing differently, in addition to a lot of the larger companies, to attract the talent from your school?
I'll jump in. I think, it's very interesting. I feel a paradigm shift a little bit in our student body and what they're looking for. Our students seem very much more passion-driven, culture-driven than in the past. It's not just the salary. It's still important, but it's not just salary anymore. They're looking in, and a lot of our students will come and say, is that a family-owned company? I've never heard that really much in the past. So I think some of these smaller farms or smaller corporations, businesses, are attracting a certain demographic of student. They're just harder to reach. I think having a social media presence or some kind of web presence is still important. There's still a generation of tech savvy students, and they're getting their information online. So we try to do a good job of promoting. We do weekly newsletters for students, and we let anybody post in that's a legitimate business or organization. And some of those are not comfortable posting on our big simplicity system or don't have the HR people to help put them through that. So we are trying to find an avenue to help some of those businesses be successful. But I think, honestly, for them to tell their story a little bit on their websites or social media, you're going to attract a certain demographic.
Yeah, Paula is definitely right. These students, I'm noticing that too. They're more in tune with culture out there these days. And the sad reality, there's another pandemic going on in this country. It's called job hopping, right? And it's amazing how fast these students are going to do it. And they're not afraid to pull the trigger. And I had one gal in her first year out had 3 jobs. Okay. But it goes back to, it's definitely not the money, but it's the culture of the environment that they're in. And specifically, that onboarding or mentoring piece that they're not getting as a result of that's making them look elsewhere from that standpoint. And then, it doesn't help, especially with some companies that these students, I can't imagine anything worse coming out of college and working in your apartment all day long without that social interaction there too. And thankfully, we're going to hopefully get out of that a little bit there. But the bottom line, even though for some people, working remote might have an appeal to it, I will tell you right now, my experience with it is that college students coming out, they despise it. Okay. They need that social interaction. and they don't need their hands held, but at least they want some mentoring and onboarding in that process there. So those mid-career people that remote work, I think, has a lot more appeal to there. But yeah, culture is a big thing with that these days.
And Mike, you hit such a good point about the job hopping. I am amazed in having the alumni piece in my job now of the alums that are calling me that are 2 or 3 years out and saying, hey, can you put me back on those emails? I want to know about your career events. I'm shopping again. They're just, and it's not, I'm like, oh, are you unhappy? Is there something? No, I'm just seeing what else is out there. So it's not necessarily that they're having a bad experience at their jobs or positions. It's just curiosity and maybe lack of loyalty. I'm not sure.
Well, that's interesting because, I mean, yeah, not only the job hopping, but the reneging that's going on out there with offers is amazing. And I talked to a recruiter at Cargill this summer, great guy. And he was actually on campus here this spring. And I said, I read this cool article in the Wall Street about the internship market these days and how reneging is alive and well and what some of these schools are doing. And I said, has Cargill experienced much of that? And he said, yeah. He goes, on a normal year, this is in the spring, he goes, on a normal year, Cargill would experience maybe 15 to 20 reneges between, I guess, internships and full-time hires. He said, to this point this year, it's at 40. And then I was up there in July. And he goes, by the way, we just crunched that final numbers, and it was 80 for the year, which is, and this was Cargill, okay, one of the top companies out there. And so it's, the best way to describe it, it's the wild, wild west in terms of job hopping, in terms of reneging, in terms of ghosting. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge culture. It makes it tough for companies to, you make that commitment. They want to do that. They need to do that. But Mike, you touched on something that's really critical in my mind, and that's that culture, and it's that first, 30, 60, 90 days of onboarding and that long-term mentoring. I think that's where, organizations, small and large, need to really try to make that commitment if they can in order to, minimize, and I don't think you'll eliminate it, but minimize some of the things that you talked about, Paula, as far as job hopping and ghosting and that sort of thing. What are some other, issues that you guys see on campus with students, I guess changes and trends that, could help some, future growers growers as well as organizations better prepare for this next wave of students?
Well, I think one thing I'd throw out there is, what amazed me having done this for 24 years, people ask me what are the two biggest changes you've seen in 24 years? And one is obviously the reliance on GPA. I remember back late 90s, it was like every company must have a 3.5 GPA. Good luck, right? Okay. And the biggest, most impactful change I've seen is timing of recruitments. Okay. I think back to that time, people didn't look for full-time jobs. People didn't look for internships till spring break. Okay. And if you're looking at spring break for internships or any sort of talent, I hate to tell you what you're looking at. Okay. So I would tell companies to be aggressive and be ready to go once the doors open on college campus, and hit that recruitment trail hard and have their materials ready to go, get involved with the career fairs, use their potential interns from the previous years as great ambassadors for them. And, we see it. I mean, Paul and I see it. We have so many students that are coming back with either a full-time offer in hand or the offer to return for that second internship. It's crazy. So timing to me is one of the most critical pieces there. You got to get in the game, and you got to get in the game early.
I will 100% agree with that. Early bird gets the worm, they say, right? And I think the second thing is what you said earlier, Bill. Invest in these students. Invest in your interns and invest in your full-time employees, because this is a different generation, and it's us as parents. We all have had our kids in college or through college, and they are used to us helping handle their lives, and they're used to teachers. And in college, they have syllabuses. They have a laid out plan. And when they get that first job, although it's good to give them creative freedom, they are still looking for some of that structure. I think invest in those students and the training. Also, show them paths for succession. Show them how they can move up in that company, that there is a future in the company for them. Access to leadership. So many of my interns have come back in the last week or so to say hi, and I'm always like, well, I always said, they come back and tell me how it was. And ones that come back most excited are like, we met the CEO. He sat down with us and had lunch. Or, we were able to tour the headquarters and actually met the whole executive team. And I don't think companies realize how impactful that is for a student to see that a CEO took a time to meet a college kid.
Absolutely. Great point there. Yep, I hear the same thing.
Well, Paula, Mike, I really want to take this opportunity to thank all that you do for, agriculture as well as your universities and helping prepare that next generation for our industry.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Bill. Yep.
Thanks, gang, for joining us today. And welcome to FieldLink. Jody Lawrence coming into us from Nashville for a commentary update. Jody, lots of stuff happening right now across the country. Harvest is underway in some parts of the nation. And the Pro Farmer Tour wrapped up here recently across the Midwest. And there's a lot of activity with the USDA. Jody, welcome to FieldLink.
Thank you, Bill. It's great to be back. Hope everybody had a great Labor Day weekend.
Absolutely. It was a great long weekend. Lots happening. We had some weather events across much of the nation. It seems to be, the same old. A lot of, whether it be too much rain or not enough rain, depending upon where you're at. But Jody, what's going across the markets right now? How are things cracking open here at the beginning of this week?
Well, corn started higher again this week. It started higher last week, finished higher, but had a little dip in the middle, higher today, and a majority of it really revolves around the Pro Farmer Tour came in with a much lower than expected national corn yield estimate at 168.1 when they released their report 10 days ago. And that is almost 8 full bushels below the last USDA report on August 12th. And we've got another major USDA report on Monday, September 12th, so just in 4 trading days from when we're recording this, that everyone expects the USDA to lower corn yield. It's just a matter of, do they get aggressive like several private analysts have, or are they going to follow their normal trend of realizing there's a problem, but also being very deliberate about getting there before recognizing it, at least in the yield data, before the January final report. The national average of all the private analysts and the other smaller crop tours that went on is somewhere in the 172 to 174 yield. And just as a reminder, we started out this year with trendline yields for corn at 177, 51.5 for beans. The August report, the USDA came in with numbers of 179 or 175.9 yield for corn and 51.9 for beans. Bean weather's been really good in August, really just the opposite of the June-July corn weather. So what we see is kind of the odd paradox that you have a declining corn yield, corn ratings, and you have increasing ratings and increasing yield potential for beans. And the bean yield, if it came in at 51.9, it would be the all-time bushel per acre yield record. And with 88, a little over 88 million acres, it would produce a massive record of yield, which is why you have a real disparity right now. You have corn rallying and beans falling to where the ratio is just a little bit over 2-to-1, which is historically very odd that it stays at this level for very long.
Yeah, definitely a lot of differentiation between the USDA and what those local analysts are predicting from, the Pro Farmer Tour, along with many other different reports coming across, and certainly impacting some of the commodity markets today as it relates to some of the speculation going on. Jody, we continue to have some impact and dealing with that impact from things taking place in Ukraine as well as Russia. What's new going on there, and how is that impacting some of the diesel prices?
Well, the Labor Day weekend saw a couple different things, and some of them popped up late last week, the NS1 natural gas pipeline that Europe agreed with Russia to get a majority of their natural gas supplies through. Russia took it down for maintenance for the second or third time since they opened it earlier this summer, and it's really causing a lot of heartburn in Europe as they head into their fall and winter and their heavy natural gas usage time, just as prices begin to soar. And obviously, if Russia decided to play their real trump card here, which is to just cut it off altogether, the world would be right back in just a really bad situation, because Europe is moved themselves into being too dependent on their relationship with Russia. And as Russia, obviously the rest of the world is furious with them over what's going on in the Ukraine, but Europe is handcuffed to Russia playing nice and keeping the gas pipeline open. So that's one thing that certainly is going to affect prices, because, and this is really just more on the energy side, because if Europe is forced to go into the open market, whether it's to the U.S. or whether it's to North Africa or wherever else they can get natural gas, any energy supply to get through their winter, then you have a real upheaval potentially in the world energy prices. And crude has dipped over the past 10 days on recession fears in the U.S., but more pointedly in China because of their zero COVID tolerance. And at one point last week, they had 40 million or 41 million people in 3 different cities under complete lockdown and shelter at home, just like we did at the beginning of the COVID outbreak. And if China demand for any type of raw material, whether it's bean meal, whether it's crude, whether it's corn, beans, whatever the case may be, if their demand goes down, the world suffers, since China is obviously the world's #1 consumer of all raw materials with their 3 billion plus population. So it's a crazy thing with just the Russia and China, how every little piece of news that comes out of there is really having an outsized effect this year on daily prices, much less long-term direction.
There's definitely no doubt about it. The breaking news is certainly affecting not just the food prices, but all commodity prices, including energy. And it's an evolving space on a day-by-day and in some cases hour-by-hour situation.
Yes, and then you look at they have taken over the nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine, which is close enough to the port of Odessa, and they restored power to it, thankfully, before any major problems occurred. But when you have Russia using a nuclear power plant as a shield in a war, the world cannot feel very safe about that situation. And certainly what's curious is nobody really knows how to take it, because I looked back and did some research on what happened when Chernobyl had their radioactive leaks, 25 years ago, maybe even 30, and the price of wheat nearly doubled. And there are 2 things that Russia could directly influence, and we could be right back to the insanity of the markets during the invasion if they decide to really become a problem and shut down natural gas to Europe, and if something very unfortunate were to happen with that nuclear power plant.
Yeah, definitely a whole lot of potential impact there that could happen in that particular situation in the Ukraine. And back to China, certainly more and more lockdowns impacting, commodity prices, but also supply chain logistics for all products. And that theme continues to carry on. So with that, Jody, we're going to keep focused here on as we get into fall. Any opportunities that you see growers ought to be taking a look at and considering? as we get a little closer to harvest time?
Well, I would continue to look just briefly at the diesel market. We had a dip early last week or late last week, and then earlier today down again into the low 350 area on the October futures. That's not the pump price, and it's not what the dealer will sell it to you, but that's my reference for everything. So if anytime you see these dips happen, where you see the futures price between 350 and 360, continue to hedge some diesel, because if Russia gets actively involved and OPEC cuts production and China comes up with a way to moderate their zero tolerance, you're going to have the price of diesel go well back over $4, and you certainly don't want that going into your heavy usage needs of harvest, and even look ahead a little bit into your winter and spring needs as well. The biggest opportunity right now is in corn. You're back up against the highs from 10 days ago from the Pro Farmer Tour report, and that really puts us, with December corn closing today at 676, and with such spectacular basis as it's been improving all summer, you're within within 30 or 40 cents in most areas of the highest total cash price basis and futures together that you could have gotten even during the May-June highs. So that's an opportunity for corn. Everybody that feels good east of Des Moines, where they've got a crop, and in some cases a better than average crop, you're in an opportunity to really squeeze a lot of potential and a lot of profit out of the market on your corn yields. While in beans, they're a little bit more of a struggle because they are so directly influenced by China and their economy. At $14, where today's close was, any rally in November futures that gets to $14.30 to $14.60 offers a buying opportunity, because the U.S. weather changed and helped the crop enough that 1 bushel per acre, that national yield has probably improved. That 1 bushel an acre that U.S. yield has probably improved over the last 3 weeks is the difference between why we're not talking about $15 plus beans and thinking that $14.50 may be a cap on this market. So I'd aim for those targets. But looking into 23, the thing I've been talking to everybody at all the crop tours and everything we've been doing the last 3 weeks is I saw that fertilizer prices went up again at several different spots this week, and with that, 622 December 23 corn is simply too cheap to attract the acres that are going to be needed. So there's no reason to be an aggressive seller of December 23 corn. November 23 beans, again, any rally that gets you at up towards $14, $13.38 was today's close, is a good opportunity, because we're in such a distant second to Brazil's bean crop. If Brazil has no growing problems this year in their crop that they're getting ready to plant, it becomes a real issue on where 23 beans could be priced. So you want to take advantage of anything you see that rallies and starts flirting with $14 for next year.
Awesome. Very good advice there, Jody, coming to us from Nashville today. Appreciate your insight as we dive into these commodities and get ready to navigate through the fall harvest season. Jody, thanks for joining us here today on FieldLink.
Thank you, Bill.
Fall sports are certainly in full swing. College football is definitely consuming many American Saturdays. Today, Chris Williams from the Helena Products Group joins us to discuss the importance of sports turf management. Chris, welcome to FieldLink.
Thanks for having me, Bill. I'm looking forward to the opportunity.
And Chris, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get started into this specialty side of the business?
I took a summer job on a golf course and just fell in love with working the ground and and growing turf and watching people enjoy the work that we put together on a daily basis, whether it was mowing or fertilizing or tearing something up and building something new. It was very rewarding to me to be able to do that.
So did you go to college to learn more about sports turf?
I did. I have a degree in turfgrass operations. I graduated from a small school in Florida. At the time was Lake City Community College. It has now changed its name and they got a little fancier. It's now Florida Gateway College.
Right.
But graduated from there in 2000 and haven't looked back.
Awesome. Chris, the sports turf business, how big is this industry? How big is it getting, I should say?
How big it's going to get, we really don't know.
Sure.
In 2018, it was estimated to be about a $2 billion industry. They're expecting that by 2028, that's going to grow to roughly $3.2 billion. Wow. And as you visit around and see how many fields are being used, how much they're being used, you can really appreciate where that number and that growth is coming from.
Well, and I think that's really interesting, and I can definitely see that as a parent whose kids played, competitive softball and in the turf. Everything's becoming more and more organized, and there's more and more tournaments, and it's becoming more and more high level. They don't play in the old cow pasture like we did back in the day. I mean, these are very high-end fields and complexes that these kids play in today.
It is, and there's a lot of effort and a lot of work put in those fields, especially to deal with the amount of traffic, because those fields are typically being used from 8 in the morning till 10 at night, and they have to be safe. They have to be ready for every game, whether it's baseball, football, soccer, ultimate frisbee. Our little local, not little local, it's a pretty good size local rec center actually has the World Cup for Quidditch, of all things.
Wow.
So it's really hard to tell where this monster's going to go.
And, it's interesting you bring up those other sports, and it just sheds a different light on how big this industry truly is. I mean, obviously, when you think about sports turf, my head, being a kid from the Midwest, I go right to football. But boy, think about the explosion of soccer really in the last 25 years. Of course, the baseball and softball thing's always a standard, but then you have field hockey, specifically even up in the northeast U.S., really strong up there, but really expanding all across the country. But to these unique sports that you just mentioned, my goodness, it's really exploding.
It is. It's not very uncommon to have an all-purpose field in a lot of locations where that field does football, and then immediately after the football game's done, they start a soccer match, and then when the soccer match is done, they start a lacrosse match. So it's just a never-ending, nonstop opportunity for these guys, and at times it's a big struggle for these folks to put together a good quality playing field.
Well, clearly one of the biggest areas that's very important for sports fields, especially when you're dealing with younger kids, high school, but even college and pros, is safety. What kind of trends are you and your colleagues picking up in this specific area as it relates to sports turf?
Safety is the number one paramount item that all sports field managers are looking for and looking to provide. It's a little bit different world from some of the other recreational turf markets where it's purely aesthetics. As long as it looks good, we're happy. Mm-hmm. That is not the case in sports field management. Safety is number one. Aesthetics come in number two. Typically, if the safety's there, aesthetics are going to be very much on course. But we've had a trend in the last few years that especially municipal fields are going over to artificial turf, and it's been about 10 or 12 years, I guess, Bill, since that trend really started, and sure, we're starting to see more natural turf coming in and replacing what that artificial brought in. And the reasoning for that is it's not so much about how much it costs to maintain, it's about the safety of the player. And it is proven that on an artificial field, a a player is about 2.9 times greater of a chance of getting an injury from the waist down. So that's going to be a hip, a knee, an ankle, or whatever the case may be, just because of the nature of artificial turf. And then the impacts, especially hard contact sports, football, soccer, lacrosse, those type sports, there's not much give in that field. And when a player hits it full force, it's not as soft as what natural grass can give. So we're seeing in the pros as well as collegiately, and it's trickling its way down now to the Letterman type sports, the high schools, the younger grades. They're transitioning away from that artificial just for that safety factor.
Yeah, definitely. If you're a high school superintendent, athletic director, you could see, on the front end that, artificial turf is really appealing from a maintenance standpoint. You can put a lot of sports on it, but to your point, from a safety perspective, the other thing, too, that's very interesting is in certain markets, that stuff can heat up pretty good, especially if you're playing games early in the fall and you still get those 100-degree days. It can get pretty warm. In some markets, that's just not feasible. But in others, it might be a decent option.
Correct. My middle son plays collegiate soccer, and we had the travel or club soccer coming up through the levels, and there was several times during the summer in matches we'd have to take 2 or 3 pair of cleats because he would melt the bottoms off of a pair being on the field. I mean, the artificials, you can see information all the time. A 94, 95 degree day, that artificial turf can easily reach temperatures of 140 degrees, where a natural field's going to be somewhere around 104, maybe 106 degrees. So that aspect is definitely in play as well. So you've really got to watch your athletes for heat exhaustion, which is another issue. Once a player gets exhausted and they're still trying to exert themselves and extend themselves competitively, that just adds more opportunity.
And it keeps coming back to that safety issue, and it can trickle-down effect is huge. Chris, tell us a little bit about turnaround times. You referenced the turnaround time to get a field ready. College seasons just opened last weekend for most college football teams across the nation. We chatted earlier about, all the rain going on. And we had a lot of delays, I know, at the Mississippi State-Memphis game and Auburn. And I know you got a pretty big storm down there in Florida, if I'm not mistaken. So tell us about turning that stuff around. In football, you come back and play next week, but in other sports, you might have to play the next day or two.
Correct. And, let's kind of start with that collegiate football and even throw the pro football mentality in there. That sports field manager's looking, and most people don't realize it, but as soon as that game is over, whether it's 11:30, 12 o'clock, there's, some of the delays they were talking, they didn't play a college football game until sometime on Sunday by the time the clock got done. As soon as that field, they can get the field cleared, they start preparation for the next week. They're out there mowing, and that gives them the opportunity to get every possible minute they can to have that field prepared for the next Saturday or sometimes it's even on Thursday. Now that we have Thursday night games. So the pros
TV is impacting that, right? So that's going to drive the dollar.
It's phenomenal, and you have to make sure as a manager you've done everything you possibly can nutritionally, through water, through all of those items to make sure that field has every opportunity to bounce back as much as possible. The last thing we want to do is see one of these guys blow out a knee because they hit a bad spot or an ankle roll, and it could be something very simple, and unfortunately it happens. But these sports field managers start immediately following the game in preparation for next week's game.
Wow. Chris, tell us a little bit about some of the product solutions that you and your team are bringing to sports turf managers across the country as it relates to supporting the strength of some of the turf and the pressure that they take.
I tell you, we attack it from 2 points, Bill. One, there's a point that we're trying to go in through the leaf blade where we're pre-stress. before that game happens, before that concert. A lot of people don't think about the concert causing a lot of stress, but you cover a natural turf grass field for a week with plywood, it's going to come out struggling. So one of the products we've been very successful in using preventatively is Orbix. And we pump that plant full of amino acids, full of opportunities for that plant to operate at its optimum level, no matter what you throw at it. Now, it is not a silver bullet, there's no question, but it is one of those products that has tremendously helped give our customers the opportunity to provide the best they can on a week by week and daily basis. And then the other side of it is we're looking at soil structure. Anything we can do to increase the root mass, the depth, the density of those roots. Because as a player, whether you're playing football or baseball or soccer, whatever it is, when you put your cleat in the ground and turn, you want to know that you're going to turn, you're not going to slide. So anything we can do, and we use products like Resurge Professional, or Zypro, a enzyme material to get those nutrients in the soil, into solutions that those plants can consume them and give us the best possible stand.
Well, that's awesome, and there's a lot of products like that that are certainly help those athletes out and those turf managers, really build a safer field for those athletes to be playing on. Chris, tell us a little bit about technology, and how is technology from your team and your colleagues starting to impact sports fields?
This is a very uncharted area it's becoming more so charted in the last couple of years, Bill. But a program like RX360, we have the ability to get very specific as far as tissue sampling, as far as water quality, as far as nutrient management. And a product like Prevail, which falls under the RX360 umbrella, or the AcuPoint underneath that RX360 umbrella, with AcuPoint, we're able to go in and geo-reference exact spots, and that way we can set a baseline for that field. So the areas between the 10 and the 20 are going to act completely different than the areas around the logo in the center of the field. So we're able to help that manager provide exactly what's needed, where it's needed, instead of just blanket going out and throwing the nutrients. That's tremendous when it comes to environmental stewardship. That's tremendous when it comes to exposure to players, whether they're 6 years old just strapping on the cleats for the first time, or they're 35 years old, or in Tom Brady's case, 45 years old, strapping on the cleats for what might possibly be his last season, who knows. Yeah. But we're able to utilize those resources to their fullest potential and know what we're putting down, when we're putting it down, is absolutely what's needed by that stand of turf.
Wow. Chris, a lot of great information here. What does the future look like, in your opinion, for the sports turf industry?
The future right now is amazing. One of the big issues that the industry faces is enough people to man those opportunities, to man those positions. I referenced my middle son earlier. His goal, once he completes his college education, is to go into sports field management. We all as kids dream of being the pro running out of the tunnel onto the field and everybody cheering, and it's just not a reality for so many people. So he sees his opportunity to obtain that goal, to still be a very active part of the soccer world, is taking his opportunities in managing those fields. And I'm really looking forward to him doing that. There's a lot of good conversation between a turf grass operations degree to a potential candidate. But the industry as a whole, it is so easy to go out on Saturday or Sunday and see those families who may have traveled 4, 5, 12 hours to go to a soccer tournament, or to a softball tournament, or to a baseball tournament. This isn't going away. This is only getting bigger. And these kids are, I say these kids, these young people who are participating in these travel clubs, for their respective sports are just getting better and better and better. And we in the United States as consumers of sports are only going to benefit from that, because all of our sports quality is getting so much better and stronger because of this. So the sky's the limit as far as I see it right now, Bill. I do think that 7.2% growth year over year that's being estimated is being very conservative. I think we're going to see more municipalities put in these fields, because it's a great opportunity for whether it's a county or a city to get an investment or a revenue train going in hosting these events. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity today.
The economic growth opportunities for quality sports fields like you've just described is huge. I've served on several boards over my career for sports turf fields and complexes. The trickle-down economics of this is huge, especially once you start considering hotels and restaurants, and it is definitely huge for a lot of communities. Chris, tell us, you referenced your son and his career aspirations. We just had some folks on from Iowa State and Clemson University talking about the demand for talent in this space. Chris, how is the Sports Field Management Association, what is their mission, and how are they, trying to, I guess, enhance and contribute to, filling some of these roles?
The Sports Field Managers Association mission is very simple, Bill, to be honest. It's to advance professionalism in sports turf management with a strong emphasis on safety through education and awareness programs and helping to build that industry. And a lot of these associations, these professional associations, offer many opportunities, whether it be scholarships, whether it be internships, even just summer jobs. There's a select group of people who enjoy building something or turning something from dirt to striped grass. There's something so rewarding about doing that. Watching your field on TV, there's always that opportunity as well. Now that's a very select few people who get that opportunity, but these associations are trying. They're reaching out to local FFAs, even as young as the 4-H club, trying to get young people involved and see that there is an opportunity. Because we have those vocational opportunities that have kind of somewhat taken a back seat to the liberal arts. These vocational opportunities, whether it be welding or some sort of mechanical position, and I'm going to throw turfgrass managers in that as well. There's a lot to be learned, and there's a lot of rewarding opportunities. We just have to expose these young people, whether we get active at the high school level, even the junior high level. Never discount an opportunity to go speak to a 4-H club or an FFA group or a high school job fair opportunity, because there's a lot of folks out there who could really benefit from looking and knowing that there is an industry that it's simplifying it, obviously, but there's a way to grow grass and make a good living.
That's right. Chris, really want to thank you for joining us here today on FieldLink and sharing us your insight as it relates to sports turf. And it's an exciting time of the year. We're all flipping the channels and watching a lot of football right now. And we appreciate all that you and your team does to help make those fields safe for our youth. Thanks for joining us today, Chris.
Thanks, Bill. It's been a pleasure.
We want to thank everybody for joining us here today on this special collegiate edition of FieldLink. We look forward to having you join us next time.